Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Shelly Show. I'm Shailendra, and you watching this simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, on all the channels live. For you to view this episode and other episodes that are run on emerging technologies, please, I would request you to follow me on Twitter, on YouTube, press the subscribe button and the bell icon. On LinkedIn, press the follow button. And on Facebook, you can like and share this episode with AI-based groups. So more and more people can get access to, and they can see and view the thoughts from our guests. So it'll be great if you could share it around, share the love. Okay, let's start. Please let me know, where are you joining us from? Which city, which state, which country? Put that in the comment section and we'll just very quickly have a look at that. And also press the thumbs up, the like button, wherever you are, whichever channel you are, press the like button so more and more people can get the live feed and they can see it as well. Okay, one of my favorite area of emerging technologies is mapping. Mapping, Google Maps mapping. Call it GIS, location intelligence, geospatial intelligence. Location and mapping system have already gone mainstream. And I tell you, a few years ago, when I was working for a large retailer, bringing in maps to the organization was a huge thing because we could plot each and every customer, where they're living, and how far they're from my store and so forth. And that was a huge exercise. But having said that, that gave me a lot of love from a lot of senior leaders. So I really love the GIS, the environment which has got maps in it. Geospatial. So today we've got what? Google Maps, Bing Maps, Esri Maps, and many more organizations who are focusing on maps itself. Geospatial information, excuse me, is increasingly becoming a part of information needs for the daily operation of any enterprise. The enterprise could be a business like a departmental store, a utility like a power company, or a local government entity like a municipality, or even a government department like which works on roads and buildings and so forth. Well, I tell you, I was able to use maps to identify where are the multi-dwelling units and the single dwelling units around about 8-9 years ago, which was a huge exercise in itself. Although many industries are benefiting from this platform, the transportation and retail industries are leveraging geospatial technology to the optimum, and they're utilizing it quite a bit, including the supply chain management side of things. So let's see, where are people joining us from, if we've got some messages. There is Francis Xavier saying, good morning, Shailendra. Hi, Francis. Rashi Bandari saying, good morning. Good morning, Rashri. Kiran Nanduri saying, good morning. Hi, Kiran. How are you? Francis is from Bangalore. Anshul Kumar, good morning from Gujarat. Good stuff. Kalacharan Pichumani, he was here last year as well. Good morning. Last week as well. Good morning, Shailendra is what he's saying. He's from Chennai, Tamil Nadu in India. Good stuff. Okay. So guys, if you've got any questions during the session, please ask them in the comment section and I'll bring those questions to our guests in the audience Q&A section. So very quickly, welcome to the 13th and possibly the last episode of this year of the Artificial Intelligence Startup Insight series. In the series, we discuss both artificial intelligence technologies, the building blocks of that, and how startups are leading the space. We are joined by Marc Teerlink, who is the SAP's Global Vice President for Intelligent Enterprise Solutions and Artificial Intelligence. Marc is actively working with the startup community as a board member, inventor, mentor, and they're helping the startup community a lot. So without any further ado, let me bring in Marc. Mark. Where are you, Mark? Hi, Mark. Good morning.
Good morning and good afternoon in your part of the world, Shelley. How are you doing?
Very, very good, Mark. Actually, I'm excited that we're going into holiday period, but still very scared as well because just recently we've heard in northern beaches from us in northern Sydney, there's been an outbreak of COVID-19, and we just might have a very low, slow Christmas. Don't know what to do.
Oh man, those are, Western Europe is going back to lockdown as well. We can only hope for two things. One, that vaccination rapidly is rolled out, and two, that vaccination is rolled out in such a way that by the time we're at the end of Q1, right, we actually get some turning point. It's the good thing is Q1 is at least in the Western Hemisphere, right? It's going to be the summer part, but it's yeah. This is 2020 has been a really weird year. I mean,
Actually,
it's first is you're almost at the end of your voice at the end of the year from all the phenomenal talk and live shows that you do, but it's been a really tough year for multiple industries, and it's also been a year of reinvention, right? That I do this theme with executives from agility to resilience, and from digital agility to digital resilience. Winston Churchill always used to say, never waste a good crisis. And in this, right, agility is you're running really fast to get a train, and you're out of breath, but you got it, because agility is about moving fast and being flexible, and right, that's what agility is about. But then you need to change trains 5 minutes later, and you need to still go over 5 platforms, and you're totally out of breath. You didn't have that extra energy, and that's what resilience is. So when you go to covered waves, but it can be anything, right? In Western Europe, it can be next year that the Brexit discussions still haven't finalized. There might be incredible border blocking. There might be 60,000 other reasons why countries suddenly block going to our topic, their logistic connections, their supply chains. And if we haven't learned from a situation like 2020, and we didn't build some digital resilience in it, right? Make the supply chain a little bit less efficient in order you have slack on the spot, etc. This is really what's going to be, and we've seen winners and losers. But the joke you and I always have, like from the top 3 C-suites, who has driven the most digital transformation in your company? Was it the CEO, the CIO, or the COVID 19? Right? And overwhelming, when I look to all my executive roundtables and discussion I've been doing, 83% is the average that has been driving it, right? I mean, that's incredible. And let's not make this a joyful thing. Oh, COVID has been so good for digital. Let's say we as mankind have shown flexibility and resilience in actually embracing digital alternatives. But still, doing this together in the studio is 1,000 times more fun than doing it over the camera with StreamYard, right? So, yeah.
good stuff. Mark, let's start the conversation with maps, and it's very pertinent today in the COVID-19 times as well, because with maps, you can actually plot on a map who's living where, how far they live from each other, how far they are close to each other. So if you want to have some distancing, on maps, you could actually figure out the population, where it is more, how do you control that, and so forth. So new mapping platforms have come in, whether it is, well, of course, there is the big Google Maps, the Bing Maps, and then a string of small startups that have come in. So
Yeah.
what do you see the impact of mapping platforms on the economy, and particularly in the COVID environment, when everything needs to be mapped and located?
Well, so map and location is one, right? I mean, we used to use physical maps, and I think the current generation of people coming out of college have no clue what you do with a physical map, how you move around, because Right now, when you use any kind of digital navigation, you are always the center of the universe, right? Well, normally on the map, you're like, where am I? Where am I going to? All these kind of things. But what mapping also did, beside location, it allows us to ask questions like the famous nearby or around me. Show me restaurants around me. Show me coffee shops that are open nearby, right? And of course, we cannot ignore the incredible example that Google Maps has made in their journey. And of course, they went to an AI journey themselves, right? They literally put thousands, millions of upgrades in that, right? Like, and especially the hardest is always in maps what I call the unmarked areas, right? When we come to the city center, it has been clicked, what are the locations, etc. But now we come. When you have this map, this physical map, this thing in your hand, right? You had like lines, and you sometimes like, but these roads are so close. Maybe I can take a fin there. There's a fin there, right? And many of us have gone on holidays 10 years ago, 15 years ago in cars, like, honey, we just go right here. We save this whole around, not realizing that right little path wasn't a straight horizontal path, but it was like a winding road in the mountain, up and down, that took you 3 times the time to go around the normal highway route. And the disadvantage of maps is still the wisdom of the crowd, right? So when you're sitting in your car and think about Waze and Google has done and what Apple has done, they struck all these, TomTom is another example, they struck all these deals with these data suppliers, like for instance, mobile carriers. And mobile carriers told you like, okay, on this street, this like X% cars that aren't moving, right? Which means that, for instance, in cities just nearby is a traffic light that's densely used. There's always this red line. And then the less smart the algorithm must go around. Instead of, maybe it's sometimes just waiter, because the average waiting time is 1 minute. And this is where the AI comes in. What is the localized insight of what's happening now and what's going to happen there? Is this right? You need to have past data, like this traffic light takes 90 seconds, therefore always 5-6 cars will back up, but bang, then it flows through. So we have two things, right? We have the unmarked area of the map, and we have the pattern of how people behave in that. And the point is, because we got so much almost real-time insight with vehicle use through the mobile carriers, there comes a moment that you and I need to say, counter-cyclic behavior. If the highway is stuck and everybody is deviated to do this, and I guess that so many percent here are on Google Maps, so many are probably on TomTom, and I look on my phone when I'm standing still on my thing, like I have this Waze Google powered screen in the car, and then and then I look on my phone on the other one, I like on Apple Maps or on TomTom, and like, everybody makes this. I probably should stay on this highway. And then it turns out to be a really interesting strategy. So the good thing is you and I can still have some fun with these so-called intelligent maps. And let's be clear, right? When you are one of the companies we had the joy to work with here, the Netherlands is an incredible dense country. I mean, most people would call it just one big city in terms of international standards, like the US or India, for instance, how they would look at it. And it is so dense that if you send a truck to a city, an old city like Amsterdam, that the shortest route isn't the fastest, right? Not to mention the amount of one-way street. You just need one. You have these little pools and canals. You just need one person to stop their car to unload, and you're like 20 minutes delay. So in dynamic real-life plotting, is not only finding the shortest route, it's also the route that is the least footprint and therefore the fastest and economical-wise. So they manage the traffic lights. Now, what they can't do, they only can do it for police and ambulance, etc., is to open up the traffic lights and green them up. What they can do is knowing exactly which lights are going to go red and green and what are the patterns, is saying, how do I route you through the city that you have that you don't go to narrow streets, that you have least chance to get stuck by somebody double parking their car, and that you have minimum time to wait for traffic lights, and therefore have the least economic footprint. And they give this signal to this retailer when they arrive, right around, okay, stock boys and stock girls, in 3 minutes there will be a truck arriving at the back door. So by that time, everybody stands ready when the truck arrives to bang, suck the truck empty, and directly push it out again. Now, that's not just the map, but that's that intelligent, active use of the real-time data in the map. And those are really interesting cases in whether it is retail, whether it's destination planning, whether it is fresh food management or telematics and fleet management. And it's the spatial visual thing, right? Companies used to sometimes say, we will not deliver to you. You are not in our zip code area. But if you actually took that store and you made a circle around, like, hold on, these zip code areas are actually closer, the other zip code areas, than the people that live in the same zip code in the other part, right? So it's you're seldom in the center of a zip code. And I think the hardest is, though, what do you do with a Google? What do you do with a Waze? And Waze Google, of course, is a combination already. How do you deal with the power of TomTom that's already incorporated, not just by devices, but by software in vehicles, right? How do you fight Apple Maps? These are the default apps on Android and iOS, and then you come as a new player and you say, oh, I got something better. So I'm really, really excited to hear from Gaurav and basically hear their story. You know, that's
Before that, I'll tell you what to do with TomTom. Save divorces, and I'll tell you why. When I came to Australia, I didn't have a car, and I saw few of my friends with physical maps in those days, right? So they would remember the streets, and they would go into that street, and the wife would be holding the map and saying, well, turn left, turn right to that street, turn left to that street, and so forth. And within 6 months, I bought the car. The first thing I bought was TomTom, and you reminded me of TomTom. That was the first thing which was on my screen. And when I started driving, because I didn't know anything about Australia, anything about Sydney, and I had to drive through the streets. So I told my wife that we saved a divorce because you would be looking at the maps and telling me turn right, and I would say, I don't agree, turn left. And either we'll have an accident or we will have a divorce. So
you had some interesting dynamics, though. I mean, I don't know how it is for you. I named mine. Mine is called Tinkerbell. And Tinkerbell and I have these, like, she's like, you must take a legal U-turn. I'm like, no, I'm not. Right? And there's an adult person talking. And what I find interesting is when you look at Tesla, right, especially the Model S, big 17-inch screen, right? And the first thing people always say when they step in a Tesla Model is like, whoa, when they see the big screen, right? And ironically, there was a poll among Tesla drivers about, would you switch to the new Porsche? Would you switch to the new electric Porsche? Would you switch to the new Jaguar? What are you going to do with the Polestar? And then the overwhelming number one is like, not as long as they don't have a 70-inch large screen. Because here you come, you have a state-of-the-art electrical car. You might even have more battery reach, which is the number 2 in the poll, than a Tesla 100 extended version, right? But if you don't have the big screen and you don't have the battery extension, like that you can drive farther and longer without refilling, and you don't have the fast charging option, so you can't in 15 minutes reach your car, it's over. But those electrical benefits were number 2 and 3. The number 1 is like, I ain't going back to a car with like this kind of little display and that. No way. I mean, isn't it interesting how it changed an experience, right?
Oh, no, absolutely. In fact, and you've actually nailed it, because I was looking for, so I've got this Discovery, which has got this 8-inch screen. And now I was looking for a next car, and I was thinking, which one? So Mercedes has got two 10-inch screens, and so is Kia. But if you look at all the others, the screens are so small, you don't want to sit inside them. After you sit inside a Mercedes or you sit inside a Kia Sorento and Kia Carnival, you don't want to sit into Toyotas of the world and the Fords of the world, which are really small screens. So what kind of experience? So maps have actually changed that experience as well, because you want to have a big screen, a large screen to work through. Okay,
Right. Right.
before I get to the next question, I must ask, there are around about 35 people watching this show live. Guys, if you've got a question, if you've got any comment around maps, put that in the comment section. If you've got a story about maps, going from one place to another, see the journey we've gone through from holding maps physically in our hand to now, as Mark said, getting you to the right direction, to the
Mhm.
shortest way, even identifying and manipulating the time red light will stop you on a particular uh, traffic light. Converting that and giving you the fastest route to reach a particular place, I think we've gone through a great longer journey. If you've got some kind of a story around that, put that in the comment section and I will actually share that story with the guys. I shared mine around having a tom-tom once upon a time when people were using maps. Mark, I'm sorry guys, please do like and share this particular video so more and more people can watch it. Please do like it. Please do
Yeah.
like it.
So, Shelley, I'd like to come back to the importance of map of data inside, right? Because data visualization has always been one of the holy grails, like how fast can I visualize data? And while IBM already in the 90s, end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, started to have spatial built in DB2, right? It took a lot of time for companies to start having simple dashboards, things that we find very normal, that would plot the data. Like you said, why are my customers there living? But the moment it becomes more interactive, near time even, right? Real time is of course phenomenal. And COVID-19 spread was a really good, important thing. Like, where are the test points, right? Because actually, we say, oh, look, COVID is everywhere. But the moment you really look to the data point, you have to say, well, where are the test point? That was the assumption, how many miles people drove to come to the test point. What have been the smarter apps saying about infection points, especially super spreaders? What were super spreader location and events? And the only way to make that judgment call at the moment, right, especially lockdown, store closing, etc., for governments, has been the visual near-time map information. And we've come a long way from 25, 30 years that the IT industry, no need for such a map dashboard, till a incredible, can we have this real time? Can we see this? Like, can we continuously see what's happening there? And imagine now that where maps used to be passive pictures, right? Not only do we do traffic patterns with mobile data, but we use sensor data, weather data, because it can have an incredible impact, like where does it rain, where does it not rain. We actually have added crowd, one of my favorite non-profits is World Water, the World Water Foundation, and what they do. And that's an important thing there. They actually gamify missing maps, right? So you can have Google satellite or any satellite picture, but especially when you go out of the city, think of India, think of Australia, right? Having details actually recognized. In this case, it's for agriculture. What is happening at this side of the mountain? What's happening with that side of the mountain? That is vegetation. That's not vegetation. Those are rock. That's probably moss. Those are trees. And the more you know, the more you can actually aid a farmer who at one side of the mountain lives, saying, these are the circumstances that are happening around you. You should harvest earlier. And we didn't have that for a few years ago, but it's mapping expertise is, and the insight it does, right? It's the sum of the single elements, the sensor, the weather, the traffic, to combine the map is so much more work. So it's
No, I tell you one more thing. The term lat long has become far more relevant today because 10 years ago, if you asked anyone what was lat long, in fact, they would think it's a term that is very scientific, but today it's a common language. Lat longs, we talk about it, and even if you go to Google Maps, right click and decide where you are, it'll give you a lat long where you are. And I think things have moved. Let's talk about the startups. So, what do you see in the startup space? Do you see a lot of startups working, driving maps or mapping area? Is that kind of and are they challenging the biggies like Google Maps and Bing Maps and
Well,
whatnot?
I think you exactly say that right. So the biggest thing is that you need to live in a physical niche area or of Western Europe or the US to find a business case. The moment you go out of that, right, and that's why it's interesting to look to Asia, Africa, India, Australia, large masses of land where there's been limited crowd enrichment of data on mapping. Um, that most Western European and American startups would say, "Oh no, I'll just take the API from Google Maps."
Mhm.
Right? It's almost like that world domination is too big. Like there's no way I'm going to make a search engine, right? It takes a really bold, big, great idea to challenge that. Um, Unless, like our guest, of course, you have that other part where players like Google aren't that super strong, and you have the ability to find your own channels to enrich it. And I think that's interesting. Waze is such an example, right? Waze was there before Google in finding out live and also crowdsourced patterns. It was a brilliant idea. In the end, they got bought for that reason. Um, so the thing is, what I see in the startup community mostly is almost a yeah, that is, and also the VC. Yeah, that's no, don't start trying to compete with Google. It's going to take too long with cash in.
Yeah.
Then you have one of the other sidetrack ideas that we can do on top of this, and just take an API. Take an API. What's the cheapest API to start with? Can we take the API and replace it later? Just do that, right? And that's what maybe it's pragmatic. Maybe it is not so innovative, but it's the reality that I see. It's ironic, like a lot of apps really need location, your GPS data, etc., to be right when it's for personal planning, when it's everything outside logistic more and more. It's like there's no fitness app I have on my phone that says, we'd like to use your location. Like, okay, listen, I love Strava. I don't mind for my close friends sharing my rowing and sharing where I've been biking, right? Because these are my routes and to share that. But when I do a workout at home, I don't want my app to say, Mark did this workout here. Like, I'm not going to share on Strava, everybody, I live here and this is where I do my workouts. Like, no, don't. So every time when one of these apps comes, or there's an iOS app, they're like, no notification, no map sharing, right? So there's also the other party over. Don't use my location for everything, right? It's what did I have? I can imagine when it's like, your Domenica, your home control, your KNX or whatever, that it wants to know where's your house so I can figure things out, right? But when you have an app, not an app for photo editing. Even there, I can imagine you won't have a map where my pictures made, like show me all my pictures there. But when you have an app for book reading, does it really need my location? You started reading this book at this apartment, and then you went to that house and that doctor. You finished it at that dentist. I'm like, so
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So what I really find interesting also for our guest today is, what was the business case that made them do this, right? What was the revenue model that they had projected to say, well, next billion is, I mean, I love the title, of course, but it's who wants to be the next billionaire. But it's really, wow, you have to be bold, and I applaud them. You have to be bold to come with something like that, to do that.
Okay.
And to put the AI in it, yeah.
Yeah. Let's get them in. But before that, guys, if you've got a question, put that in the comment section. Please like and share this particular video with more and more people. If you like it, it will automatically be shared. So it's good if you can like. If you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, wherever, just press the thumbs up button. Doesn't cost anything. So more and more people can have a look. and also learn from Mark, of course, and our next guest. So one such company that is successfully created a geo mapping solution or geo mapping platform is NextBillion.AI. So NextBillion.AI is building an enterprise platform for mapping, enabling customers to build an ultra high performance mapping applications tailored for their users and geography. Next Billion is serving customers in 10 plus countries across 5 continents in a variety of sectors, including ride hailing, on demand deliveries, last mile logistics, and smart cities. So they're pretty much on the supply chain management area as well. Today, our guest is Gaurav Bubna has 10 plus years of experience building AI products for a range of industries across the globe, including finance, HR, mobility, food delivery, and logistics. He's held leadership roles in the mobility industry across Ola and Grab. And if you guys know Ola, Ola is the taxi competitor to Uber, and Grab in Singapore is the competitor to Uber, leading large cross-functional teams and initiatives. So let's get our guest. So drum rolls for Gaurav Bubna. Hi Gaurav, welcome to the Shelly Show. How are you doing?
Hey Shailendra, hey Mark, thank you so much for the invite. Excited to be here.
Good stuff. I
Hey,
just
Gaurav.
I just gave some color to or gave some background about you, but I think it'll be good to hear from you. Tell us about yourself and your journey of starting this startup. What actually instigated you to actually start a startup in mapping area of everything?
Yeah, great. So happy to do so. And I think I feel like my job has been made much easier because both you and Shailendra and Mark, both of you like laid a pretty solid context on the consumer experience of how maps have evolved, and sort of that naturally leads to what we think is the next, or at least one of the next key phases of opportunity in this space. So I mean, my personal background is I've been working on sort of AI and big data, machine learning type problems well before data science and big data was like a buzzword. So yeah, started my career on Wall Street. Did a startup which was acquired by this company in the Bay Area. Then eventually found my way to the mobility, food delivery type industry. So worked with Ola. Then I think the interesting part of the story is when I joined Grab. So that this was early 2017. And then the insight there was, we found that, hey, obviously, everything about Grab, which was ride hailing, food delivery, last mile logistics, it was all essentially on a map, right? Like you're trying to move people or goods or food from one place to another. So we relied very heavily on maps. But the challenge for us was, that typically meant, hey, using Google Maps. uh, Google Maps just sort of kept raising prices over the years. So there's sort of this very, in 2018, their prices went up like 10x for a lot of developers. Almost putting some, companies out of business almost. And just leaving the cost aside as well, there is just once you reach a certain scale, there's a lot of needs that you have from your maps. Essentially, an additional 2% improvement, if you can squeeze out at 1 million or 10 million rides or orders a day, that's a lot of money, right? And that's a lot of impact on your profitability, your ROI, etc. And at a certain scale, Google here, TomTom, whatever, all of these companies started to not be enough. And again, a very, so some simple examples. So traditionally, as Shailendra, you and Mark pointed out, these maps evolved out of the need for consumers, right? Like so that you avoid, the divorce or the accident problem, so that you and your wife don't have to debate, hey, should I be going left or should I be going right, right? So, I mean, that's been the traditional use case for consumers. But now, if put yourself in a ride-hailing food delivery company shoes, you're doing rides and deliveries in cars. You're doing it over motorbikes. Some of your delivery agents or partners are doing these deliveries on e-scooters now, right? Or there could be delivery bots in the future. Or if you're operating trucks, as Mark was saying, trucks in Netherlands or Amsterdam, they cannot follow the same routes that cars have to, right? When they're going from point, like imagine a cross country trip across Europe. If you use Google Maps, it's going to predict you from Paris to I don't know, Prague. It might say, hey, you'll get there in a day and a half. But the reality is, the truck driver is going to stop along the way. He's going to sleep, eat. So the actual trip will probably take him 4 days. Now, this distinction may not matter so much to a consumer, but this matters a lot to businesses, because each sort of percentage point in efficiency, accuracy, all that leads to direct ROI, and that's sort of the context in which we started investing heavily back at Grab on our own sort of map stack there, and saw a lot of improvements in terms of customer experience, competitive advantage over other players in the region, uh, and we were fortunate back at Grab to have so much capital that we had successfully raised from SoftBank and whatnot. But the reality is, again, as you and Mark rightly pointed out, the need for location now is even your book reading app talks about, hey, can I have your location to tell you started reading this book at your home, then did it at your doctor, etc. So really, the need for maps, for businesses is there across a very wide range, and not all of them are fortunate enough to have a large team. Maps also tends to be expensive. It tends to be very technical. So the hope here was, can we take some of these insights and build a mapping platform just for enterprises? We're not focused on building anything for consumers. I'm like a huge fan of Google and ways using it on a day-to-day basis. But we think it's not enough for consumers. And again, happy to go into details of what we see are some of the specific problems and the specific opportunities there.
Okay, before we go there, I will correct you. It matters for the consumer as well. So I'll tell you why. We were planning a trip from Sydney to Gold Coast, and Google Maps said it is going to take 8 hours. But in effect, it took us 10 and a half hours because we were going with children. We were stopping 2 or 3 times. But that makes a huge difference, because when you're booking a room somewhere and you then find out that they're given somewhere else because they didn't find you there at the time you promised. So it can impact. So I will just want to make my experience on that. So that it does make a difference to the consumer as well.
But I also think it's a real good thing that you raise, Shelley, for the expectations that consumers have translated back to the professional world, right? So when let's take TomTom, right? Actually, the default device built-in standard for traffic, also in the commercial world. So I would be a truck driver and I would sit in my TomTom. I had all my maps loaded, right? And I would take my optimum route. Suddenly, there were consumers around me that like more dynamic, more interactive on their phone. It would say, no, you need to route different. And it would get predictive analytics in it, right? Yeah, you probably might want to call that hotel because you're going to be late, right? And all these little things that came in the consumer world, and they put a pressure on the business to business world, like, why don't we have this anticipation? Why don't we? And think about, this is the electrical car thing, right? One of the powerful things, we were talking about Tesla and the power of their maps. But one of the powerful things is you sit in a Tesla and literally voice controlled, you can say, right, are there any fast chargers nearby? And plop, they come on your map. They're literally built in. You even, when your map routing says your distance, you don't have enough battery. These are the points optimal that you can do. And the next part is you're on the route, and actually one of the fast charge point is already locked, like I'm going to arrive at this time. At that time, that fast charge point is there. So you do not only know how much are available, but you now will know there are 32 stalls. There are 8 available. Within 10 minutes, 7 of those 8 are taken. I am still on the line for number 8, so I better keep this speed up and don't muck around, right? And those things, where can I refill my car? Where do I find replenishment? Where is a rest stop? right, has become such dynamic. And so you have that one, and then you just have open source data. And I'm dying to hear from Gaurav where he gets his mapping data, etc. from. But when I looked at open source data and open data, they have an incredible plethora of knowledge already. But what they lack are those insights. Those insights like, not what's the fastest route, but what's the best route for me to have minimum electrical charging around the route, so minimum stops. What are the best routes that I actually have on the right moment? 2 hours after I had my lunch, there's a rest stop, because that's when I need the bathroom, right? Those kind of intelligence consumers expect and businesses demand that. So Gaurav, tell us the holy grail. Where do you get your map data from?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's a again, like, fantastic introduction in a way to lead. It naturally leads to sort of, what a core hypothesis is. So as you rightly mentioned, right, Mark, so there are sort of two parts of map data. One is sort of, representation of what a city is, right? Hey, here is a road, here is a business, here is a traffic light, etc. And then there's a second bit, which is sort of the insights. Now, like, if you again go back, in history, and we talk about all these companies here, TomTom, Google, Bing Maps, etc. All of them prided themselves on having access to data. So, Google got its data through Android and other Google Maps users. Apple, you could say these two companies had a monopoly on data. Here, and TomTom just invested a lot of time and energy into collecting data through partnerships or just physical collections. Now, our core view here is that while historically it was very difficult to have location data, the reality is today businesses, if you're any business operating any mobile application, you probably collect a lot of location data, right? So taking your same, truck example, Mark. So, if you're a trucking company in the Netherlands, you probably already have a fair amount of location data based, and it tells you that, hey, this is how my drivers actually drive. Forget what Google does, forget what Waze tells me.
Right.
This is what my drivers actually drive.
Right.
And what our view is that, while historically, having data was the advantage, now there are plenty of companies that collect more than sufficient quantities of data. But the challenge now is not so much in the data. It is that with that data, how can I derive those insights that are relevant to me?
Right.
Now, this is what we believe is the core insight for us, where, so, traditionally mapping companies were all about data. We actually have no proprietary data. I mean, we have some partnerships, but our capability is purely in software and AI. And what we do is, for example, so take the trucking example. We believe that any solution that's built for a Netherlands trucking use case, built off of Netherlands trucking company's data, is going to be better for them, even if Google may have 10,000x the amount of data. But the reality is it's all generic data. Whereas if you use the data for a very particular use case in a very particular geography, that solution is going to work better for them. Now, this is the core insight, that essentially we build off of. So we are a pure software and pure AI company. So we're building a bunch of components. So take traffic as an example, or take routing, preferred routes as an example. It's like we have a module called preferred routes. Now you put in your historical data in this, and then out comes an API that gives you preferred routes for your users. Now this API is not going to work for, Uber in the Netherlands, right? But this API will work better than just anything else on the planet for trucks in Netherlands. Now, this is sort of the core insight for us.
So one of the biggest thing is, I do want to go to your data sources, because let's take Western Europe as an example, then move to the US, just for our viewers as well. Western European countries are relatively small, right? I mean, most US states would already cover 2 or 3 countries in a nutshell. The Netherlands is extremely small and has the highest density of people per square meter. But because of that, you rapidly go over the border. You go to another country, right? And then you get mapping data from another country, especially when it's open source, and it's all centric about that country. And this is really the first thing that has changed in geo-mapping in the 80s and 90s is that we suddenly started to use the authentic name of the city.
Mm-hmm.
Preferably as close as possible in Latin towards the spelling of it, right? And and I mean, Western European languages use Peking instead of Beijing as their name, to give a nice example, right? And the moment you start combining two data sets, we know, Shelley, this is always when the world goes wrong, right? And they don't have the same kind of base standards.
Yep.
Right? This is really where it gets interested. And you will be surprised in the US that how hard it has been over time for companies like Grant McNally, the big map maker there, to deal with the difference of standards, how mapping was done in states and map information, how much they had to create their own body of mapping and map checkpoints to actually standardize so you could compare apples and apples and oranges and oranges. A really good example is beside the standard is a behavior. Like if you go to the lovely state of New Jersey, a gas station does not allow you to do self-service thing because that's a union thing. You will always have a person that will refill your car. We all know if you're depending on the working crew there, right? Refilling your car is going to be a different experience than you come in, you do it to read, now you catch the cash and you're out, right? It's different. Like, hello, how you doing? No, my window doesn't, stop cleaning my window, right? It's a different experience. So how do you deal with the different kind of underpinning assumptions in the data material that you collect? Because you get those preferences, but you still need to route them back to the original.
Yep, absolutely. And I think in a way, you talk about another core problem we tell our customers, which is, just taking one of the examples you mentioned, if you're in the United States and, you run a business that it needs you to, for example, needs your trucks to drive via a lot of gas stations, it's very different in the United States than Netherlands. So ideally, the same platform that's built to operate across 190 countries is probably not the right thing for you, right? So to take an example, I mean, this problem that you described, Mark, it happens at all levels. It happens on the core map data. It happens because we take different companies' data. All of them have different formats. And then, there are all these local nuances and cultures where, for example, in Indonesia, there are what's called odd even rules in Jakarta, in capital city. So depending on the number plate of your car, you can or cannot do some things. And there is no way any global mapping provider is going to build it into a uniform API because it's too special case. But if you're a business in Indonesia, you really care about this because this might have as much as like 10%, impact on just your fleet efficiency.
Yeah. No, that's a good example, and let's be clear, right? I mean, many countries, many cities, many large cities have parking permits that are that have restrictions, right? So, I have a parking permit for the part of Amsterdam. That doesn't mean I can park in other parts of Amsterdam. So this "where can I park my car" question isn't really relevant because where can I park my car with my permit is a much more important part.
Precisely.
Like you said, Paris has his own odd and even day zones. Like you can only park on this part of city. You can enter, as you said, in Jakarta. Paris has had that as well. This part of town, if your license plate is X or your code is Y, or you have a blue or a red sticker. So a really good example is this: how does this apply to me? How does this routing apply to me? How does this access apply to me? And so tell us more, because if I was a transportation company, I would love to have the insight from my competition. So I would go to you and say, hey, I like your wisdom of the crowd part. By the way, can you give me the insight of how these other guys drive to the town? What do you tell them at that moment?
Yeah, so right now, I mean, our model, as I said, right, like the way we resolve this specific concern. So I'll answer this question in two parts. The first is, we are very sort of, we don't cross share data, because we say, look, your data is for you. We are a software company. We are not trying to be a data marketplace. So, your system, your data is used to build a solution for you,
Right.
so that your platform gets intelligent. Uh, so, there is potentially some, business cases lost, because, hey, we could potentially share data, but then because of this model, we've been able to convince like companies, that are in the Fortune 5 to even share data with us, because we say that, hey, you know what, your data is used just for you. On the other part of this, right, like standardizing, for example, and this is where, I mean, the opportunity we think is huge, but you have to start small somewhere. So some of the early use cases, what we are doing is very straightforward. We say, hey, you know what, you're probably using a Google Directions API in your platform. Now, the current Google Directions API you use is, a generic one. It's probably suboptimal. It's probably expensive. It's not customizable. Let us just offer you a like-for-like replacement for it, right? No change for you. You just get a different Google Directions API that works better for you, that performs better, that has better latency, supports higher throughput, will lead to better ROI for you, etc. So there's no work, right? It's as simple as that. So the current customers that we are going after, we are sort of going with this replacement type strategy, where we say, look, we're not trying to create something new for you. You are already running your business on top of some mapping API, some mapping data. Let us replace that with data or APIs that are more tailored for you, that will lead to better business outcomes. And we'll do it for you at slightly cheaper cost. That's it. So it's super simple. Now, over time, as you said, it's, some of this is still an open question for us, which is how do we standardize some of this to efficiently serve a lot of customers at scale. But right now, the idea is very simple. We say, look, you're already user of Maps in your business. Let us offer you something that's a direct replacement, so that you don't have to make any change on your side, in a meaningful way, and you just get better performance, better ROI.
So this begs, of course, questions for our viewers as well. It's like, you have a Wall Street background, right? You're pretty clear. I love the value prop, how you're giving it. But the first two questions that always come to mind, like, what is your revenue model? And two, how did you pitch to your first investors to get started? Because it takes some time to build this up. So enlighten us. What is your revenue model? How does it work? I'm one of your clients. You pitch to me and say, like it. It's even cheaper. Love it. We'll try it. What do I pay? How do I pay? We don't need to hear the amount, but what are your parameters? Are they per call? Are they per period? Per user? Per site?
We're exploring two models. The first model for wide range of our customers is actually super straightforward, right? Like, if you're switching over from, say, a Google Maps or a Here Maps, you're already paying them on a business model they define, which is typically, say, pay per API call, pay per whatever, right? Like some version of usage. We say, let's stick to the same model, right? Think of all, there may be some one-time professional services type implementation fee, but outside of that, everything for you remains the same. So today, let's say you were paying us 1 cent for 1,000 API calls. You know what? You just pay us 0.9 cents for 1,000 API calls. That's it, right? So in a way, what we're trying to do for our customers in terms of actually across the board, be it the product, be it the data, be it the commercial model, to ease procurement for them, we are saying nothing changes for you. Like the world, everything remains the same except it's slightly better, right? That's it. So that way, it makes everyone comfortable. Now, for some of our more advanced customers, like for example, we're working with very large food delivery player in the United States, and what they want is, they say, hey, you know what, I want to call. One of the reasons I'm not able to use Google Maps enough is because I really want to use it 100x of what I actually do today. But because I pay them per API call, I'm not able to use it 100x. Right now, if you can't charge me 100x, like on any pricing model, you cannot charge me 100x. So in some of these scenarios, we create sort of custom pricing for them. based off of some other construct. We say, hey, you know what? You want to use us for New York City? You just pay us a lump sum for New York City, and then you go use it however you want. We actually even take our APIs and deploy this on-prem. So we'll deploy this inside their cloud environment. So we say, you know what, you have full control over what you do. Go ahead, run it as if it was your own system. Just pay us a fixed lump sum, and that's it. But those are some special cases. But again, for most of our customers, what we try and say is, hey, the world doesn't change for you. There is no seismic shift that you have to go through. Everything remains as is, except that it's slightly better.
Okay, I've got a few questions
Oh,
for you.
back to the other question. So
Oh,
you started, and
Yeah,
you had a great idea. How did you get your funding?
Yeah, so I think that's somewhat of an art than science. So I think what helped for us was, as Mark and Shailendra, you also said, right, which is, I feel like now for the first time probably in history, there's a lot of appreciation for, or a lot more appreciation for bold ideas. So I think our investors loved that hey, we're going after a pretty large problem statement where I think if we still don't know to what scale does it work out, but if it does work out, it's potentially a very large financial outcome for our investors as well. I think that was one. I think what also helped us was, we had, even though we had not, we weren't say 5 years into running our company, but we had solved a similar problem back at our different jobs. So we could relate, we could say with a lot of authority that, hey, you know what, we know how to solve this problem for customers. I think that really helped us. We also had within a few months at least a few customers who, although were not paying us a lot of money, but who had given the confidence and who were willing to vouch us as a pretty strong reference to say, hey, yes, we really believe in this problem statement. So some of those things come together. But you're absolutely right, Mark. There is that fundraising is more art than it is science. Although I guess some people might have a different view.
Yes, I more and more am running into what they call the two-in-a-box founders, of which one of them directly jumps on the product vision and basically has this, like, we're going to make a minimum viable product, we're going to make it a minimum delightful experience, we're going to make sure that we're going to have some pricing models and premium. And then the other one, who later becomes more the CEO or whatever, is not just a figurehead, but she or he are continuously fundraising, expectation management, inspiring customers, weeding out partners, and because partner relationships to get started are as important as having a product, right? And it's a full-time job for those founders, almost like they only have to articulate. And the risk, of course, is that they get separated from the rest of the team. Right? You have these founders that come with a great vision and they come home and then their co-founder says, it's going to take 3 years before we have this built. This is the problem we solve, not that this. Start with this, right? That's the other part. Or you have it around, right? And the product guy says, like, oh, we can solve the world. And the founder says, yeah, you don't know how to tell this, right? So it's so important today that the moment you start, you already have this, like, what problem am I solving? What is the added value? What would it be worth to the market? What is the minimum product really going to do? How do we deal with scope creep? Like when our first 5 launcher clients says, but I would like this and this, and I would like that, and I would like this and that, right? And those, what you said is like, well, we had track records because we actually had solved similar problems. That's a confidence booster for investors. We clearly rapidly had some launching customers with our first prototype or MVP or whatever the first product was. And we had a philosophy that we weren't going to directly take on the large players, but actually should, like good AI always does, say, well, there is a customer secret sauce. That's the propriety, how you do things. And in this case, we're training the AI with how do you do your routing? And what is the best experience of your best drivers, right? And that is Yeah, that's a very good approach. Yeah, definitely.
Good stuff. I've got a few questions, but before I get there, I would request the audience, guys, if you've got a question, put that in the comment section for Mark and Gaurav, and I will definitely take that question in the audience Q&A section. So please put your questions in the comment section, and also do not forget to like, share, and retweet if you're watching this on Twitter, so more and more people can watch this episode. Gaurav, my question to you: I come from India. The problem with India is that street names are the street behind Ram Temple or the street behind, the mosque.
Mhm.
So, how do you cater to that kind of a problem wherein you don't even know? Even if I have to decide to give my address to you, I might turn around and say, "Oh, my address is 5 streets behind that
Yep.
particular roundabout." How do you work around with those scenarios where the points are not readily marked?
Yeah, exactly. And so this is by the way, an exact problem statement. We are working with a pretty large e-commerce company in India. Like as we speak, this is the exact problem statement. So this really matters for e-commerce deliveries because if you're delivering 1 million parcels a day, and all your customers give you are just some strings of addresses, you actually need to convert them to precise lat longs so that you can plan your deliveries better. And actually, the answer to that question, Shailendra, is actually in what you just said, right? Which is, and it explains why a traditional, same idea, right? A platform built for the globe does not, scale well. So so again, some statistics in India, based off of any sort of, survey you see or data that you read, anywhere around 30% of postcodes are just wrongly specified, right?
Absolutely.
Or people don't know which postcode they're actually officially a part of, right? So that's an example. In Indonesia, as an example, depending, even in a city like Jakarta, the reality is the government itself has officially not named something like 40% of the roads. So this is something the government will tell you, there is actually no official name of this road, right? If you go to sort of more rural parts, I'm sure this number is actually much higher. So the reality here is the very best source is going back to the same point. If you're a delivery company that has done a lot of deliveries, the very best source of data is actually your own historical deliveries, because it will have the type of customers you serve. I'm sure in your same house, you will write the address of your house differently than your wife will, than your father will, your mother will, your kids might, right? So, but probably you order on Amazon, right? So now Amazon knows this is how Shailendra writes the address. He's asked for 5 deliveries in the past. My delivery drivers have gone and delivered for this string. I don't care what this string is. For this string, this translates to this lat long. And this is actually, while we are very AI first as a company. So we say same thing, right? Like you've done 1 million deliveries in the past, share us that data. Now, based off of that, our AI will learn that what is it that your customers in your geographies, how is it that they write addresses? Uh, and then our AI sort of works for your million and one address that comes. It understands that, hey, you know what, this address, the way it's written, seems suspiciously similar to these 5 requests that were made, which seems like almost the same customer. So probably it's the same location, right? So this is sort of the difference of how we approach this. You would be surprised that this is actually not just a problem in India, and not just a Southeast Asia problem. We now have customers in who are requesting the same thing in Ireland, in Netherlands. I actually have a call in an hour with a customer who, from Netherlands, who has this exact problem in the Netherlands, where customers specify addresses with typos. So it's actually a pretty global problem, although the exact nature might be slightly different. But again, this also hopefully illustrates why we think AI is the right way to solve these problems, as opposed to having some rule-based system saying, okay, this street is here, this house number is here, etc.
So just to go in, because I really find this is really important, right? Because I know there are some viewers that say, hold on, Western European countries, I type in zip code, house number, and bloop, within 1 square meter, I know exactly where it is. I'm like, yes, you know where it is, but that doesn't mean you know how to come there, right? One of the examples is like, I know several offices, and from the zip code, you can exactly know where they are. But that doesn't mean you get there in that straight line, because actually the entrance is the other part of the building, even if that's not the zip code. Or we all know that, right? That the street entrance is the street address. Like in New York, it's blah, 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 5th Avenue, or blah, 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 3rd Avenue. But then you have to go in the side street, right? Which like 31st. And you're like, why is the entrance there, right? Or why do I, right? Because that's the other part of play. The second is, so I recently moved back to the Netherlands, and my apartment building is new. And the building has a name, so some people don't even know the address. They just put your name, the building, right, and figure it out. And it was really nice to get flowers that way, right? And clearly Flores figured out where that building was. But here it came. Although the zip code was known to me, and it was known in the zip code database, not all geosystems had picked it up, including Google. So when I was on Google Map, it literally gave me the zip code of the 2 streets opposite. Like, it's I like, I don't live there. I don't live in, and it's because the zip code system is so precise, you understand it, right? The geomapping apps don't say, no, it must be there. No, it's here. It must be there. Right? And then the biggest frustration is when you type in your address that the system refuses you. So going back to your example, then you stop in the override real building addresses, right? In that common field, etc. How do you pack these things out? So for those of you watching and thinking like, well, but in that overstructured society, no, things go wrong there as well. And by the way, the moment you go to France or to Germany, there are plenty of, you give a zip code and it's like a whole agriculture area, right? I mean, the wine castles in France, small wineries, small chateaux are still, go to that village, take the second sand road to the right, past the first castle, and behind there is the winery, right?
Yep.
How do you put it in a, and then the address is of course like winery X village name. That's it, right? And I mean, imagine you're the first time delivery there, like.
Okay, guys. One question to you, Gaurav.
Mm-hmm.
There is Google Maps, there is Bing Maps. Why should anyone come to NextBillion.AI? Why not stay with those biggies who were there for last 20 years doing the same thing in day in, day out? Why NextBillion?
Yes, I think a great question, Shailendra. So, for our customers, we tell them sort of, what we say are 3 C's, sort of a tagline. So the first is, we give you better control, right, over sort of your mapping stack, right? Like the same examples we've been talking about that, hey, I moved my house or the entrance has moved from the back door to the front door. Now I want to really, I want control over this. I cannot rely on when Google will update this in their application 2 months later, right? Or I have some, something about my business. I'm launching motorbikes and not just cars. I want control over, what I do. So we say, control is the first C. Second is customization. Again, all kinds of things that we talked about. I want something that works well for my drivers and not what, others might be doing. And the third C that we talk about is cost. So we are, depending on the use case, we're able to drive anywhere between 10 to 90% sort of savings for our customers, not including any sort of ROI and, performance gains. So this is sort of, what we tell our customers. As a rule of thumb, what we tell them is, taking the example of, say, deliveries or, ride hailing type companies or, e-commerce companies, we say, if you are doing anywhere north of 1,000 deliveries a day, you probably should have a chat with us because you're at a sufficient enough scale where you already have sufficient amount of data, and then if you where 2% improvements, 5% improvements, 8% improvements at that scale will start to make a meaningful impact on your business. So this is essentially the message we give to our customers on how they should be thinking about their mapping platform.
Okay. Before I get to the question from the audience, I've got one more question. You started the startup, and of course, it comes with its own kind of challenges. So, what kind of challenges did you face as setting up something which is, excuse me, is not very commonly known kind of an area? Well, no one would start business in mapping services. Instead, they would say, "Well, oh, I want to do something to do with Amazon," or How did it all start, and what were the challenges? What kind of challenges did you face?
Yeah, I think again, fantastic question, and I'm sure something which every entrepreneur will be able to relate to. I think the challenge here is, once you start, one is for you to believe in this idea and this vision that, hey, you know what, I'm going to do this. It's going to be great for my customers. It's going to be great for my investors because they'll also make a bunch of money from this. And hey, you know what, my employees will also have a great time solving such amazing problems, or at least what I think are absolutely the world's best problems to solve. It's one thing for this to be in your head. It's another thing to actually go out and sort of actually convince people. So I think the first 6 months, 12 months of any startup, I feel like it's convincing your first investors, convincing your first customers to give you a shot, which as you just said, right, like, hey, I have Google, I have had this for 10 years, I don't need anything else. Convincing your first employees to say, you know what, I want you to leave your fancy, high-paying job and actually, work with us instead. So I think, yeah, it's a bunch of these things. I think getting to just, it's like establishing a tiny beachhead, getting your head out of the water in every area. I think is the most challenging thing, I would say. And then, after that, you can start to think at least a little further ahead of, hey, strategy or process, or I don't know, like things of that nature.
Good stuff. Okay, before I go to Mark, audience, if you've got a question, put that in the comment section. We'll take that very soon in the audience Q&A. Please like and share this episode with as many people as possible so that more and more people can learn from it. Please press the like button. It'll be very helpful. Okay, Mark, any questions? You've asked a few questions. Any other question you've got for Gaurav?
So, yeah, almost. So, growth, scaling, right? This is always the big issue for success, right? The success, it's a small tail, and then you want to make that curve to a more exponential growth. What are the 2-3 things that you would recommend other startups and scale-ups in the lesson you've learned in moving forward to scale?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
or
I
what
think,
are the struggling with you want the answers from us? That's good too.
For us, and like my personal view on this is, as in the previous question, Shailendra asked, like, what are the initial challenges? I feel like once you get to your 0 to 1, where you have at least some set of customers who find this compelling, who want to pay you, employees who believe in your vision, some investors who believe in you. I feel like the first part to scaling is actually to not try and do too many new things. It is to say, hey, you know what, this works for me. There is a big opportunity in this specific segment, in these geographies, serving these customers without trying to be overly clever on a bunch of new things. So I think the first set of scaling opportunity I feel is for startup should be to say, okay, I've established a beachhead. There's a set of people in the world who find what I do promising. Can I just serve an ever larger number of them? So focus 90% of your efforts on, I would say, just that basic. And then, after that, maybe 10% of the time you should be thinking about next steps. So I think that's sort of, what I would say is one important thing. The second important thing I would say is, end of the day, your customers matter a lot. So, it not being sort of, the flip side of that is not being overly excited by the first little bits of success. It's one thing to serve one customer, it's another thing to serve 100 customers. And, sort of not taking your eyes off the ball, so to say, ensuring that you're focusing, ensuring that, you continue to deliver, sort of customer delight, and ensuring they find success. And I'm sure if you can make 100 customers successful, you probably will become successful yourself. But sort of not keeping your eyes off that ball, I think, is super important.
I think that's a really important thing, that stay on your core value proposition, stay on your core offering. It is, we were just talking about a few seconds ago, but it's so, one of the biggest things that I see in that curve that you start scaling up companies is, and another thing, and let's do this, and our clients want this, and right, and of course you can concentric extend your offering, but the beacon is still that core value prop that you gave, right? And I hear Gaurav also saying that, right? It's that core value prop. And of course, okay, for you, we can do another pricing model. Okay, for you, right? But it's not for you, we can do another pricing model. Lean back, like, if we extend, would this change? How would we do this for all others? That's always the okay, so, right, we do premium, or we do per API call. All right, we understand there is a segment that will not go for API call anymore. When do they enter? When do they not? Or do we tell the others that we're not in it? And the moment you have that as your strategy, your core offering isn't changed, but your pricing is changed. You can, of course, extend your core offering, right? I mean, because you have routes and you have propriety per company who does it. But if two companies say, hey, and I had this case here in the Netherlands a few years ago, take the flower auction. The flower auction in the Netherlands is one of the largest in the world. Actually, there's a big difference between Dutch flowers and flowers from Holland. Dutch flowers are grown here. Flowers from Holland are roses from Kenya that fly into Schiphol Airport, go to the flower auction, get tested and inspected, get sold in an online monitor, then go back in a truck, go back to the airport, right? And then go to America or whatever. The problem is that 40% of the trucks, right, that are around the Amsterdam airport area are empty. They're either empty going to pick up at the flower auction, or they are delivering at the flower auction and they go empty back, right? And we looked at that moment with some parties, right, about what you could do in route capacity matching. If you tell us which route you're going, and you tell us which capacity you will have in the way out or in, you might actually be able to pick up somebody else's stuff that they normally would do in a route. Now, in the end, these kind of initiatives always get killed because everybody's like, yeah, but I want all the routes. No, I want all the routes, right? That's where it goes wrong. But this kind of route capacity matching in that area, it's an example to say, yes, I can grow. Yes, it stays to my core because I have these two proprietary data sets that I will match for the client. But it's not a total different service because it stays to your core. And I think what Gaurav has been telling us, Charlie, is his success, the success of NextBillion, has been to stay close to that core in offering and scaling up. And that's such an important message there. I just can't re-emphasize it again enough.
Good stuff. Okay, before I get to the audience Q&A, Gaurav, you've got any question for both of us? Any of us?
No, I think I would have loved to. Actually, one of the questions I had in mind was, your personal experiences with maps. But I think, you guys already shared quite a bit. I loved your insights on actually some of the history, right? Like of how, like I remember when I went on my first backpacking trip to Europe, and it was like, oh shit, I just arrived in France, and I'm like, okay, what are the maps? And then you're trying to plot your way and constantly look, oh, this is this street here. So yeah, that was pretty exciting. I would love to hear, I think, based off of this discussion, and I'm sure, I know SAP has a pretty large practice as well. serving transportation logistics customers. Would love to hear, what are some of the problems you are seeing with some of your, customers globally, that, relate to some of what we're saying. So yeah, would love some customer insights from, both you and Mark.
Can I put that question to the audience as well? So, audience, do you have any kind of such challenges or problems that you see while working on the geo maps, the maps, the platform that you're using, or I get stuck with what Mark said quite a few minutes ago around the petrol pump may not be clearly marked. Well, I may just cross it and then figure out, oh, it's gone. Any such experiences, please share them, and we'll take them in the audience section. Mark, I would leave. Do you want to answer the question? Go ahead.
So the most important is partnerships, and I can't emphasize that enough. If you want to grow and you want to scale faster than organic, right? Then sharing is caring. If you make the pie bigger, for everybody gets a bigger piece. So the question is, what are the 2 or 3 added value partnerships that do not only just become a reseller, but can add value for it? And let's go to SAP for 10, 12 seconds, right? So SAP itself isn't in the mapping business. We do not create map. What we do is we work with most APIs. We used to have a product called SAP Analytics Cloud. We have integrated SAP Analytics Cloud into our business technology platform. So we brought our APIs, our data sources, and our data management, and all our cloud analytics together in one platform, one portfolio with dashboards. So it's much easier the moment you want to make an analytic dashboard that you pull data sets in, that you pull APIs in, you take SAP's own learning. For instance, a geo mapping or a geo enrichment API. And what we see there is that more and more clients are saying, yeah, that's not enough. For instance, Open Data Impact Map is one of the biggest APIs that have been taken. So of course, in COVID, right? Open Data Impact Map is one of the biggest sources that shows Western COVID. American elections, right? Same story. Now, what does American elections do? Well, for the 10 days before the election, when there were queues of voting, logistics were totally different in the US than they were the days before and that they would be the days after, which had an incredible impact in planning. And we saw that a lot of our clients are in transportation, those that use geo-enrichment to directly say, put an Open Data Impact API data over my logistic planning. And what does that mean? That meant per county, not per country, per county in the States, your logistic routes temporarily had to be diverse. So I find that event-based deviation from your normal pattern. Normally I do this. Normally this is really the best route. But today is a day this is going to be different. And that's really important because this goes back to your guys like, I know what I do. This is really the best route. But not today, John. Or not today, Bob. It's not today, Shelley. It's not today. Yeah. Right? So for one of the things for businesses like yours is integrations with larger players. That's a partnership, but also partnership with those that are in the niche of geo integration, and especially that make their money by spotting all those events, because that's just outside your core. You're not continuing to run down what is going to happen in the elections in the county, what is happening in the city of Amsterdam, which bridges this week again on and off, etc. Right? Not your issue. Like the traffic the traffic light companies say, we pull everything from everything. The only thing we do is we add our knowledge of the traffic lights real time to re-optimize the route, or to optimize and therefore re-optimize the route. And those partnerships with players that already come with these services that are in that business, this is the best practice for this company, right? So those kind of partnership are the second. The third are the traditional, right? The software, the SI, the software integrators, basically, because they are more and more looking to a toolkit, right? So one, get yourself into the API stores of the larger players, the SAPs, the Salesforces, I hardly can say the word, the Salesforces, the Microsoft Azure store as well, etc., as a third party. Because that's the other part, right? Get yourself there as a super API is a better word there. Second, get yourself into partnerships with 2 or 3 dedicated SIs, etc., and then get yourself with some typical transport organizations that recommend like Open Data Impact, right? But that recommend a sector, like a food delivery sector, or whatever. Those are the kind of partnerships that having 1 or 2 people in your company that only focus on those kind of partnerships, I think, keeps your eyes on the ball and also help you grow at the same time. That's
that's good advice. Yeah, thanks for that, Mark.
Good stuff. Okay, now let's get to the audience Q&A section. And before that, I would request, guys, everyone watching this, if you've got a question, this is your moment. Put that in the comment section and I'll take that. If you miss the bus, you'll miss the bus. So, and along with that, please press the like button, the thumbs up, and the heart, and whatnot, and share it around. And let's get to the question and answers, the Q&A. Okay, let's start right from the top and what people are saying. I must take that. Krishan Pawar says, love from Oracle. Chandrabhan says, good morning. Chandrabhan says, just want to know what SAP AI impact on technical functionality of SAP. Let's say, for example, SAP HANA. I don't know what that means, though. Mark,
can I give it a chat? So we started 3 years ago, exactly a few days ago, 3 years ago, with an AI portfolio called Leonardo. That portfolio has now been morphed into our business technology platform that I just referred to. So we have a toolkit of APIs, how you can connect with SAP. We have a toolkit of machine learning prepackaged that connect SAP, like let's say you're an SAP catalog for a retailer with a capability. The capability can be mostly external, like an app that scans my sizes or whatever. And we build those AI components on top of standard platforms, so TensorFlow, IBM Watson, Microsoft Cognitive, etc. But we also have some of our dedicated, as open as we can make it. There are proprietary components in it, but machine learning that allows you, with the knowledge of processes, which is what SAP does, right? Business processes to build and solve a problem. So mostly what we've done is we created in this business technology cloud intelligence technology packages, little pieces of a little bit AI, a little bit of machine learning, a little bit of RPA orchestration that says compare to contracts, do a reconciliation. So you can build your custom solution on top of it, but it connects to the core of API. That's the core technical problem solved. But exactly like in the mapping example, the way you do something in your company is so specific that an out-of-the-box app would never be configurable for that anymore. SAP HANA and SAP data and all the data management around it, from having it standalone and having our analytics standalone and having our technology packages standalone, AI standalone, we all integrated that in SAP Business Technology Platform. We announced it a few months ago. Have a look on that. You see the impact of AI on our technical functionality and what it does for HANA. And in plain English, we drink our own champagne.
Good stuff. You've covered it all. Okay, next comment is from Dushyant Kumar Tyagi. Says, hi Shailendra. He's been absolute regular watching all our shows, I think. Thank you very much for joining, Dushyant. Surendra Bisht asked the question, I wish to know some examples of real business cases for industry to relate with, like manufacturing and heavy metals. I think that's specific for you, Gaurav.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think we probably already covered some of this, in our examples. I think Mark, talked about quite a few of these. So, for example, one of the common problems that any manufacturing company has is, okay, you manufacture, but there's a lot of supply chain problems, right? Like, for example, how do you get raw material? How do you do that efficiently? You manufacture, goods, then how do you get it out to your distributors? And you want to optimize this process. And one of the sort of major operating costs for some of these companies tends to be around the cost of logistics and supply chain. Uh, and logistics and supply chain is an area where we work very closely with a lot of our customers. So take the same example that Mark had mentioned earlier, where imagine you are a manufacturing company in India. You have your factory somewhere in North India, and you're shipping something to Bangalore. Now you want to predict with a degree of confidence when will the truck actually arrive, so that you have the people ready to unload the truck. You have the people ready to ensure this entire operation happens smoothly, because there are all kinds of rules, right? Like, a truck cannot enter the city after 6 p.m. After 6 p.m. the route has to be different. After 8 p.m. you can do some things, etc. So this is an example of a set of use cases we support. So we support route planning for our customers. We support accurate arrival time predictions. Designing maps that are very specific for, say, heavy trucks. All of this with the goal of improving these companies' operating efficiency. So I mean, anything around logistics, supply chain is a very common use case for us to support.
Good stuff. Thank you for the answer. And I think, Surendra, you've got the answer. Guys, all those guys who are watching, I've got a few people watching at the moment, more than 25. Guys, if you've got a question, put that question in the comment section and I'll take it. We're just getting towards the end of the show. So, Kalicha and Pichumani asks, hi Gaurav, how this technology will help to common people of India? Is this technology focusing only on solving big corporate problems?
Yeah, I think, again, great question. I think our view on this is, at least for us, these large companies are a great way of impacting things that actually, common people face. So imagine, like, you're a very large e-commerce company in India. Now, take Flipkart as an example. There are all kinds of, today they have had, I think, 200 million odd people, 300 million people shop from Flipkart in one way or another. Now, a core part of the Flipkart experience is you place your order. How is it that that order gets delivered to you? Now, if, let's say, as an example, we can serve such companies across the globe. That's a direct way, or rather not a direct way, but an indirect way that actually allows the end experience. Now, obviously, the end customer does not know that, hey, NextBillion is powering it, but hopefully they see, 6 months earlier, my parcels used to take on an average 4 days to arrive. But hey, it seems suddenly that something has changed in the last month, and now my orders are able to arrive in 2 days. Now, this is a very simple example. Or that, hey, Flipkart used to charge me 50 rupees for shipping fee, to deliver to my tier 3 town. But hey, now they're able to do that at just 30 rupees, right? So hopefully it encourages them to shop better, have a better online shopping experience. Again, simple examples of how better maps translate to, like, sort of a common person. And while the difference may be subtle, but at scale, this, makes a pretty large difference.
Thank you, Gaurav.
I want to add to that. Like, I mean, there are two incredible big problems or challenges in logistics that online or from online to physical really need to be right. The first is absolutely the warehouse part itself. So from the moment I get the order, how fast can I have it ready for shipment? And the second is how fast can I get it delivered, right? And the last months of lockdown of the world has shown that delivery times, like, I'm out of this now. I can't even go out of my house to the store. The store is closed, or I can't go physically there, or I can't take public transport or whatever. So we even gone to to same day delivery or 1 or 2 hour delivery, especially fresh items, right? I'm not talking about food and takeaway delivery here. I'm talking about household items. So we're talking about how does every human being, every consumer benefit is like for companies that one have figured out like I'm going to get the order, I'm going to make it ready for delivery, I'm going to get it out, and two, having that ability, as Gaurav says, to actually get it there timely and get it there cheaper, right? We see more and more companies following the Amazon Prime principle. Be a customer with me, pay X amount or a year, and for that amount of money, we deliver any package for you within this time frame. That's not how the world was 5 years ago. You paid per package, you paid an incredible amount, right? You had to pay for the return, and now it's all pay for it, fixed amount, we'll deliver it, we'll even pick it up. Right? The world has changed logistically, but that also means that the speed and the relevance of routing and the timing is going to be essential there. So I think it's a really good question. Liked it.
Good stuff. Kalachan, hopefully you got the answer. Now, because you got an answer from Gaurav and a bonus from Mark, I would request you to make that like to a heart so that it's love, that you love the answer. And also, please share this video with other groups which are AI focused and your community, so more and more people can learn from what Gaurav and Mark had to say. Okay, next question from Shadab Pervez. Hi Shadab, how are you? He said, hi, great work and ideas. Any thoughts on how you can use place key in your offerings?
Actually, this is just me being ignorant. I'm not very familiar with place key. So yeah, I'll look this up and happy to connect offline to share my thoughts.
I totally agree. Actually, I didn't know what place key was, so I was Googling it while you were speaking. So I will give you the benefit of doubt on that because I wasn't aware. It says is a free universal standard identifier for any physical place so that the data pertaining to those places can be shared across organizations easily. So have a look at it. I think it's been launched recently. The website is www.placekey.io.
Yeah, I think this again, I would have to look into more details, but at the face of it, like I know this idea of unique identifiers for places or locations, it's obviously a big problem to do with, addresses. For example, I know there are companies like What3Words that are trying to create these effectively unique identifiers for every place on the earth. So this seems like something that's related to, I guess, places, data, or more POIs. Yeah, I mean, the concept definitely sounds interesting. End of the day, a lot of maps rely on data. So yeah, would love to look into this more and see if there is something for us or anyone else to leverage. But yeah, definitely sounds a very interesting concept.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, provided it's like every bit, every lat long on the map or every point on the map becomes a unique identifier. And that reminds me of the kind of work I did a few years ago on, creating the MD multi-dwelling units and the single dwelling units where we actually collated everything together to see. And I couldn't expect anything less from Shadab. Shadab is the module lead at Hexagon Geospatial. So you couldn't expect anything less from him to bring something very new to the table. So thank you, Shadab, for opening our eyes. There's something called placekey.io, which we should look into. Thank you, Shadab. Okay, there's a question from your organization, Gaurav. Praveena Sukumaran, I think she's your marketing lead. She says, Gaurav, could you explain how the client data be used? Will it be shared across other customers?
Yes, I think this is obviously a common question we get from a lot of our customers. And the answer is no. I mean, as we mentioned, we're not a data company at all. So we are a pure software and AI company. So we invest a lot, for example, in data security, privacy, making our customers comfortable that hey, their data is used just for them. We also, provide things like on-prem deployment. So, our entire system runs entirely inside a customer's environment so that their data never has to leave, whatever they're doing. So yeah, we invest quite a bit of energy in ensuring our customers feel comfortable around how their data is being used, etc.
Good stuff. Thank you, Pravina, for the question. I think that gives itself a reason to share across your network. So please share the video across your network. Next question is from Pradeep Varadraja Banavara. I've got the name right. Hi, Pradeep. How are you? He says, any advice on one, how do you crack the deals with Fortune 500 companies? And two, how do you convince them to share their data with you? Gaurav, I think this is for you.
Great question, and I think we've been fairly lucky on this so far that we've actually had quite a few very large customers trust us, very early on in our life cycle. I think it goes back to some of the earlier, points that even Mark had mentioned, which is having a very clear value proposition. So understanding your customer and what is the exact pain point that they have, which is not getting serviced elsewhere, and then what is it that you can bring to the table. I think having a very clear value proposition is super important, even more so when you're dealing with larger customers. The other piece of advice, if I can share, is things with Fortune 500 type companies just take longer. So if you're working with a startup that's valued at $100 million, things, you probably just talk to the decision maker. He or she likes your product, and hey, a month later, you're live running in production with them. This scenario would probably be unlikely with a Fortune 500 company, because you have to probably go through teams of people, procurement. So just being patient on working through these things, and also I guess understanding that, hey, large companies have their own sort of process. So yeah, that's like a world of its own. But yeah, these would be 2-3 pieces of advice that I would have.
Good stuff. Mark, you want to add anything to it?
Well, I like the last line. Large companies have their own process. The point is that a startup, any small company, but certainly a startup, can easily be sucked into the process of a large company. Like, well, we first like to do a proof of concept, and then we're going to do this, and then you're going to talk with our procurement officer. We're going to go to the redlining of the contract. And before you know, 10 of your best people for 6 months are sucked in, right? That large company. And it's really important to be the first second you have love to talk about your value prop. Love to explore how we can partner. Let's be very clear. We're small. We don't have your resources. You have capacity. We have to do this nimble. We have to do this narrow. We have to do this short. And if it doesn't fit in, we'll come back later when we have the capacity. We just don't have the capacity to do it your normal governance ways. If you don't stand up for yourself at that moment, you're going to be rolled over. I just want to make one little sidestep for something, because we've had this discussion. And Shelly, I'm sending it to you in the chat so you can, in private chat, so you can give it to the audience. There's one of my favorite books is actually Why Do Buses Come in Free? And this is about the hidden math of everyday life. And the reason is, this is about how you use statistics, not just in route planning, but especially in geo and route planning, right? On a large route, what happens that there's a moment that the buses come in free. So you miss one bus, and a second later, the same line 22 comes there. And you look in the back of the bus, and you see there's another line 22. I've been waiting for 25 fucking minutes here, and there's now 3 buses arriving. And this is basically when you make on long stops. This is also a delivery truck. In the end, everything clusters together. And this is one of the most important issues in logistics to crack. Now, for those of you that actually say, hey, I like to read more about how you use math, statistics, and the underlying part of AI, right? How you solve the problem in a really accessible, fun way. It's an older book. It's not about AI. It's literally about the underlying math of AI. But it tells so much about the kind of stuff that Gaurav and you and I have been talking on today. And I thought just for the coming holidays, it's a fun read.
Yeah, it's a really interesting book.
Good stuff, good stuff. Okay, next question, next comment is from KCBS. But before that, Pradeep, I think you got the answer from both Gaurav and Mark, please share this video with other people so that they can learn from it. Okay, KCDS, which is from India, saying, "Hi Mark and Gaurav, we common public Indians now want to use or explore any such technology to prevent corruption in our country and replace the existing election process of governing our country. We need to explore technology-driven government replacing human-dependent existing systems." Great comment. Yeah, I wish that could happen. Any point of views?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take a crack at it. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. Also, probably something which not just folks in India can relate to, but I'm sure many other countries across the globe as well. And I think for us, I mean, look, from our perspective, we think areas like transportation, logistics, smart cities, another great example, which Mark talked about, the traffic light situations. These are sort of obviously, governance in a country is a pretty large problem. But if you focus on some of these areas, we think bringing about better AI, better technology and automation, goes a long way to sort of, eliminating potential nodes of, unnecessary, people, middlemen who try to, let's say, tweak the system to their personal preferences, bring about a better day-to-day experience for citizens of a country. So yeah, I think, these are areas that, we hope, we can impact in a small way that has, good impact on the final line, citizen and consumers.
Absolutely. Okay, next comment is from Jay Chandra Maripati. Hi, Jay Chandra, how are you? If we have good expertise in GIS world with building maps, how can we collaborate with SAP? Mark?
That's a good question. First, it's the best way to. There are two ways to do it. Either you do it through partnerships. So basically, your integration partner that works with you works with SAP, and bring it together. The second is you basically submit to the SAP App Store. So as I said, in the SAP App Store, we have both Google APIs, but also other parts, basically, to say these are the APIs and the super APIs you can use with SAP to enrich SAP with geo-info. Now, then we have some SDKs for those that want to have, especially mobile apps, right? Again, the moment you say, well, I do not want to just be in the SAP App Store to connect to SAP, but I also want to be there mobile, make sure that your API directly can be called by the most common APIs that are mobile, like the Apple and the Android one, and get yourself in some stores there, right? Because unknown is unloved is unused. That's the story in short. So map analytics, SAP is very open. There's something, nothing's more believable than a repentant sinner is a really nice American statement. From a very close company 10 years ago, SAP has opened up incredible to use open APIs, open data, and open sources. So for us, it's about you being available to actually integrate with us. And to do that, you need to have an API standard, a super API standard, or connect with an SDK. I hope, Sandra, that helps you get going. If not, Google SAP App Store geodata.
Good stuff. Thank you. I hope, Jay, you got the answer. Please share the video with as many people as possible, and let them learn from these two gentlemen. Okay, Shada Pravee said, thanks, good luck. And before I end, I just want to mention two things. One is placekey.io. I think it's interesting, so just making that comment there. And also what Mark said, why do buses come in threes? The hidden maps of everyday life. That link is there on the in the chat as well, so you could use it there, but it's now displayed here as well. So have a look for you guys. Good stuff. Let me look at any other questions. Not at all. So there are no questions anymore. That's it. Guys, that was it. I think we've had almost everything covered. Too many questions from the audience, and of course, I had a few questions too. Okay, before you guys go, one comment, one phrase, one paragraph that you want to leave with the audience. Mark, for the last time this year.
Well, first I want to say it's been an incredible blast, Shelley, to be as guest, or as you kindly give me so much more credit as co-host in the show. It's the last show of the year. It's the season part, but it has been a roller coaster in the most positive way, right? To go with all these phenomenal guests we've had, and Gaurav, it's phenomenal to have you today here. I actually learn every episode much more than I think I contribute, and it's for me this is already good, but I hope the audience does as well. There's one message I keep hammering in shows sometimes in the end, but when you want to have a successful product that is AI powered, enriched, enabled, whatever you call it, go to a process you know well. Take the most mind-numbing, repetitive, boring task out it and replace it with AI in a way that it gives a value, not just by speed, but by an accessibility. And that's exactly what Gaurav and his team did. They already knew the problem, they had the track record, and they basically said, if we can add something that with AI, that repetitive, the normal drivers call each other, how do you do this? Hey, I've never been in Calcutta South. How do I go through that? How do I get that to those others? The moment you get that experience exchange, because that's what they did, and you package it in AI and make it available faster, cheaper, better, that's where you break the code, and that's the moment you actually break the bank.
Good stuff. Gaurav.
Yeah, I think, so firstly, thank you so much, guys, for having me here. I think this is the most fun podcast, that I have done. So yeah, I really enjoyed talking here and sharing sort of, more about us and how we view the world of maps going forward. And yeah, excited to actually be an audience in future series.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure having you on the show, and Mark, for the last time this year. I'm sure we'll be back next year, early next year, with some more interesting startup CEOs, and we'll share more information with you guys. Good stuff.
Thank you so much. Gaurav, thank you so much. It was so much fun to hear your story. Really, really enjoyed it. And I wish you and NextBillion the absolutely best of business. And Singapore has been, how do I call it? Delayed every 2 months. I have an outstanding ticket. And every 4 weeks, I talk with my agent and says, push it forward. Same flight, same thing, only, so somewhere next year, we definitely will sit on the terrace, have a cup of coffee, and love to hear how you guys are doing.
Yeah, and would love to meet up in person, Mark. Whenever you're here, please do hit us up.
It would be so much cool. Actually, we should go for location when COVID is really out of our memory and we don't think about Shelley. The Shelley on location.
Good stuff. And I wish, Gaurav, you to become the next billionaire. As I say, you just want an RE in the end and you're done. You're missing the RE. Good stuff. Thank you, and bye now, guys. So guys, that was Gaurav Bubna from NextBillion.AI, Next Billionaire, and Mark, our very own Mark. It was pleasure having you all here for last 13 episodes. You know how it has been that when we were kids, all the series were 13 episode series. I don't know why, but then I was just doing calculation in my mind that it's a 52 week year. So if you do weekly stuff, then you land up having every quarter 13 weeks. So that's why I think they did 13 weeks or 13 episodes for a series. And fortunately for us, this series was 13 weeks to end at the end of the year. And yeah, it was a pleasure having you guys here. One more thing for you, and that's very, very personal. My book, Making Money Out of Data, the first chapter of that, or the first story of that, actually talks about how data and geolocation is used to create ways for people during a football match. Go have a read it if you've got the book. If you're not, let me know and I'll figure out something out there. And have a read. And I think that's a bit interesting. But that was done 5 years ago. So things have changed significantly, but not that dramatically, it looks like. But anyways, thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you all here, and I'll see you early next year for this episode, for the next episode of this series, which will continue in the next year or so. So see you again, and thank you very much for your time. And bye now.